Welcome everyone to Motorsport Games presentation. This is, we're going to talk about games today. My name is Dimitri Kosko. I'm the CEO of Motorsport Games. We're a NASDAQ traded company under ticker MSGM. And just as the name suggests, we make video games. What makes us special, we don't only develop them, we don't only publish them, we also make exciting esports around these games. But the really cool part is that we hold some of the world-class licenses that we're able to make these games around. And I'll speak more what that means. We're formed out of our parent company, Motorsport Network, which actually happens to be the largest media company in the motorsport space, largest by audience size. That's where I came from. I was as chief operating officer around global operations. And then we looked at data and one day noticed when the parent company had 30 million monthly uniques, that about 5.6 million of them own a gaming console. So we said, here we have a large audience that's into motorsport or automotive, but we don't have gaming products. And hence how we started Motorsport Games. We were able to take the company public to get listed on NASDAQ through a traditional route. Some people asked that question before, so very traditional IPO, roadshow and so on. We are now around the world with approximately 200 folks in 6 different locations. Most of these folks develop games. So that's the largest part of our headcount. Our revenue streams are literally these guys and content. So if you go to your local Walmart and you're trying to look for a racing game that's branded NASCAR, us is the only company you'll be able to find. This is our license. So similar, as you guys know, NBA gives a license to somebody to make their game, Madden, there's an NFL game, and so on and so on. We make racing games. So we hold official licenses for those major series. We'll talk about which in a second. So we make our revenue stream by selling these games and selling content after the game is purchased. The content that you could think of is more cars, more liveries, just something that enhances your experience, something that's very standard in a space. And since we're in public, we did a couple of things. So we have acquired some unique technology that allows our products to stand out. I'll show you that in a second. We launched some of our games. These are for Xbox, PlayStation, PC, and so on, and recently Nintendo Switch. And we signed more licenses. So that means we have ability to create more official games than just NASCAR when we started. We carry 3 different business pillars. They are very important to us. One is that we make these official games. The one that really puts a spotlight on the gaming experiences that we create is our esports division. And I think a lot of people talk about esports. There's a bunch of companies that focus on esports, but there's one thing that makes us unique is that we create esport experiences around our own games. So some of the stuff that you have heard of other esport companies out there making competition, really putting a massive spotlight and creating massive audience around a particular gaming experience, what that does is helps that game publisher sell more games. So we said we would only do that around our products, and I'll tell you what we have created already as traction. And what's also important is when you take these gamers and you take these competitions, you have to have a sort of a go-to destination for these virtual racers to reside in. So the ultimate goal is to build one of those largest virtual racing communities in the world. So that's our 3rd business pillar. Just some highlights about us. We're part of 3 fast-growing markets. Motorsport, I think I don't have to tell you guys, it carries a lot of passion, especially around F1 and a recent Netflix series and all of these things that are bringing really good tailwinds into the industry. We also participate in gaming for obvious reasons. And esports, we have strategic and long-term relationships to create these official gaming products in esports. We leverage those relationships and our parent company's audience and other things that they carry. We do believe we are in a pole position on esports side. To give you an idea, there's a stat later on. We already held the largest esport racing event in the world that attracted about 81 million fans. So that's a serious magnitude. And during the pandemic, we have helped a lot of motorsport race series to replace their physical events with the virtual ones. And we have acquired technology that gives us a competitive edge to make sure. Here's some cute faces of guys that are behind us, but what's important is that yes, we have tech entrepreneur background and experience of how we run a public company, but look at Peter Moore and John Shepard. These are industry veterans. Peter led EA Sports for a long time and then was a COO of Electronic Arts as well. And so was John Shepard, whose company was bought by EA. Previously to that, he was at Microsoft. He was COO of Zynga and so on. So we have a lot of game veterans that are helping us shape the products that we're working on. And some famous race car drivers. So here's the 4 iconic franchises. We call them franchises because these are license agreements that allows us to create gaming products and esports under those brands. So we're good stewards of those brands. We have NASCAR. So as I showed you guys an example of the NASCAR game, that is our license until 2030 when it's up for renewal. We have a joint venture with the owners of 24-Hour Le Mans, and we have a license into that joint venture also for about 10 years. It's an automatic renewal. We have similar relationship with IndyCar and British Touring Car. For those of you that are not familiar, it's a very popular race series in UK. It's not the size of NASCAR, but it carries that popularity in that size in that part of the world. So these are the licenses that we hold and allow to make gaming and esport products for. And the way we do this is we took some of really unique IPs. Some of you guys have heard Unreal Engine, produces some of the most beautiful graphics and is part of a lot of the AAA game titles. We paired it with 2 acquisitions we made, R-Factor and CarCraft. Those are 2 logos. If anybody has been outside the hallway, our simulators out there, you could play a karting game and you could play R-Factor. So they're sophisticated racing simulation experiences. So what we're doing is we're taking great graphics, pairing it with very authentic virtual experiences on how the car's supposed to feel, right? It's a replication of the real world. And we're attaching them to these iconic brands. So what I means is that we create a great racing experience, then package it inside a NASCAR experience, because that's more than just about racing. NASCAR has its own personality, IndyCar has its own personality, and so on. And we publish those games. That is literally how simple the business is. Here's our recent game releases. I held up, we just launched NASCAR into Nintendo Switch for the first time. You could buy it on Amazon, and a whole bunch of regular stores. We did an update to the R-Factor, which is the game you'll see outside, so is the karting sim, and we launched our annual release of the NASCAR game. And what I mean by annual, I just want to stress that because we are a sporting game as much as we are a racing game, similar to the examples I made, NBA, Madden, NHL, NASCAR is also meant to represent the NASCAR racing season. So it's fair to assume that we will launch a NASCAR 22, 23, 24, 25, and so on for as long as we have the license, because that's what that community wants to do. They want to play with the latest driver, which is often their latest hero, in the latest car livery, on the latest track, and so on. Similar like NBA 2K and other sporting games. To highlight 2 esport events. So what happens when you have these official esport licenses, like we have the IndyCar or the Le Mans, we're able to replicate the real race in a virtual, but you still have the real race celebrities, so the real race car drivers participating in the virtual world. So you guys have saw during the pandemic, a lot of the racing have stopped, right? You couldn't attend the event and so on. We stepped in and we were able to make, let's call it equivalent interactive experience for the fans, where they saw their same famous drivers just playing on a sim, broadcasted on linear channels, digital channels, and so on, and it immersed quite a bit of audience. So these are recent ones we've done. That's January, and this one finished in January. But during the pandemic, since I was just talking about it, in 2020, when Le Mans Virtual we did for the first time, we had 14 million live viewers on it. To put it in perspective, during the same time, that's about double the average that NBA final games derived. They had about 7.5 million. We had 14 million live viewers. So there's a lot of audience in this. And what happens when you do great production and showcase this exciting competition, you bring spotlight to your gaming product, so you're able to sell more games. So it's very strategic for us to have esports. We publicize our roadmap because it takes quite a bit of investment to launch a game. So when you're starting a franchise, you have to invest in making that experience good enough and authentic enough so when an IndyCar fan boots up that game, they know what they should be expecting and they expect to have fun with it. So we spend normally about 2 to 3 years to launch a game from the beginning. So since we just acquired the IndyCar license not too long ago, we signed BTCC and Le Mans. Those are all in development. NASCAR is the only product that's already out, and we're doing annual sequels of it and making sure that we're delivering more and more features as the gamers want. So this is what our roadmap looks like. What this means is every time we launch a new product, you could almost think of stacking an additional revenue opportunity on top of the existing one. So that's why it's important for us to showcase this. Here's what gives us a competitive advantage. We acquired very sophisticated sim platform. So what that means, it takes a long time to have a gamer, like a coder, to code virtual replication of the physics into the game. So how the car feels on the track and so on. The only way you could really validate if that's accurate is if you have a real world driver play that who has experienced that in the real world and give you feedback. That takes an enormous amount of time. We bought Studio 397, which did that since 2013. They've been fine-tuning their physics engine to get it to a point where they're noted as one of the most authentic virtual racing experiences by real-world drivers. So they're the ones that are endorsing this, and you guys could look it up. So we acquired them because now we're able to take that technology and that experience into all of our racing games, because that's all our focus, right? We bought 704 Games. That gave us access to the NASCAR franchise. We then expanded that license to include esports, and we extended it until 2030. Their expiration was earlier. And we bought a karting sim. I urge you to try it. It's really, really fun. So this technology paired with Unreal, a very beautiful physics, it's what we're calling our game engine that allows us then to just make these different racing franchise experiences. So that's what we output, the games using this tech. So, and it's very simple of how we sort of execute on our purpose. And the purpose is really to bring this excitement, this thrill of motorsport to the masses. Because not everybody today has access to trying a race car, right? Going on a track. It's expensive, right? It's exhilarating, but not accessible. So our purpose in this life, that's what the team really wants to do, is make this accessible for everybody. Because anybody could pick up a Nintendo Switch and try it and have fun with it and sort of immerse themselves and so on. I bet if I ask around the room how many of you have tried a Mario Kart, quite a few of you will probably raise your hand, and that would come with a smile because that delivered a really nice experience. That is what we're here to do it with these captive audience and beyond. So we really want to wow the users, excite them, and so on, create really exciting competitive environments. So imagine a community where, let's say, all of us feeling ambitious, we could all get on one racing game and start racing against each other. So that is something that we'll do. So between games portfolio and esports experiences, tying it all together in a community is really this virtual ecosystem that we're after. So that's it. These are recaps of what I already said. So I'll welcome questions. Sir.
What's your percentage customers or users, United States versus the rest of the world? The reason for asking is Formula One is the biggest one globally. Some of the other ones are more focused on the US, like IndyCar and NASCAR.
You're absolutely right. The percentage is obviously different for different products, just like you're saying, for different game. So currently only the NASCAR franchise is the one in market. That's over 80% US based, and the rest is surrounding regions, as you would think. Other games that we have, like CarCraft, that one is just a karting sim, so that's not necessarily geo-tied to a US. But as we bring these other franchises to market, Indy is a fair assumption. It will also be majority US based, not currently because we don't have that game in market, but once we bring it. But BTCC, that's a British one, so you could think those regions will be surrounding. And Le Mans is very much a European focused one. So that's how we diversify the regions on which we're able to collect the revenues from as well. Well, that license is taken up by Codemasters, which was recently acquired by EA for $1.2 billion. And that license comes to renewal in 2025. And you could look at some of the press releases we have done recently where this R-Factor, the simulation platform, is actually being used for some F1 related experiences. So maybe we could position ourselves to be a good contender for that license when that's up for renewal. Thanks.
Speak a bit about where your pricing point is relative to competition.
So normally, since we only had the NASCAR franchise to date in market, we tend to be about $10 below the, let's call it AAA gaming titles. So that way also the user expectation is not that they're going to receive this, enormous experience that normally AAA games could go into tens of millions, if not 50 in some cases like GTA, over 100 million investment in development. So to kind of keep the expectations of our users, we have the retail price point at $10 below during launch.
Do you have any intention of doing game development on Oculus or VR platforms?
A good question, and the reason it's very good is because if you think about all different types of gaming, when you put on VR, like let's use shooter as an example, that's a pretty dangerous scenario. You put on VR and you're trying to walk around, you most likely will hit a wall unless you're in a big area. Racing, you naturally sit down. You put on VR, so it's a lot of more natural kind of immersion mode. But to answer your question directly, not the fact that it's just applicable, our CarCraft game, the karting game, is already VR capable. You already could put it on. And because I showcased that that is part of our overall common technology we're using across all racing games, I think it's fair to assume that we will make sure that that makes its way through. Thanks. Good questions.
Yeah, I wanted to know what kind of devices you are seeing that have the most success in PlayStation, mobile phone. Which kind of devices do you like most for your users, and what's the feedback that you're receiving?
So the question is, which are the most common platforms out of total on our Xbox and PlayStation, right? Those are the common platforms. So those are the main ones that we're seeing people are using our products. Mobile, we're still a growth opportunity for us. We're very minor in terms of how much of our total portfolio is our mobile products, even though we do have a NASCAR official mobile game out there. But as far as total revenue that we're able to derive is not material just yet. But it is something that is a growth opportunity for us. Focus is on the console products at the moment. Thank you.
I know with the NASCAR game, with the edition, it's really just the first iteration so far. So maybe you have to look at something like Madden or something, but what is sort of the expectation for how many customers will come back and buy it like every single year? How does that break down across the customer base?
We don't have an exact expectation as X amount will come back and buy year over year. I think we just have fair assumption and some historical data to tell us that if we're able to portray a season like a NASCAR accurately, right, and it makes those users happy, which is not necessarily what we honestly done with the last release, right, but we have improved quite significantly from that. Like a lot of game companies, their first release is not the most amazing one. We could see that with year over year, that should increase over time. And we saw that in history with NASCAR franchise with EA when they had it. So year over year, the numbers were increasing. But for us, because we're representing a season, there's an expectation that a fraction of total NASCAR fan base would be interested in the only official NASCAR game. So what that percentage is our job to continue to increase that conversion out of the total audience. Thank you.
On that visual versus in-person, I mean, that, a lot of these sports are hugely affected by COVID. What's the need of folks wanting to come back in person, or folks actually preferring this as a platform versus in person?
That's a very interesting question. So if I understood your question correctly, you're saying what is kind of the fan interest to come back to a physical sport versus a virtual sport? That's probably a question I don't know a direct answer to. I could only share maybe my experience of attending the tracks, right? IndyCar races, or those grandstands seem to be packed. So I'm not sure where some TV ratings or other things are derived. NASCAR events often look at least sold out. It's a big family event. And same thing on the gaming side. We see people are looking forward to the next version of the game, next annual release, because they want to play the latest hero, right, that they go there on the physical end. So I don't know exactly which one is getting more or growing faster than the other. I could only expect that a video game is more accessible than a physical event because there's physical restraints, but physical events are also very fun, and they carry different type of experiences like senses and surroundings and rumble and things that would like to bring into the game with time. Thanks.
Do you do a lot of marketing and advertising at the physical events?
We do what we like to call activations, so just allow people to try it. We especially like to do that to gather end user feedback right before the game launched. So before the last one released, we actually went to, I believe, about 5 races, and we showed up at the event with banners, and NASCAR supported this. They provided us space, which is also excellent of a partner of them, and we just let play. And I attend those events, and honestly, it brings massive joy of seeing kids, coming in, playing, and then leaving, and then coming back again, and bringing their parents and saying, something about their experience. That's what kind of gets me up in the morning and saying, I would just want to bring more of that to more fans. But we don't do like brand advertisement, if that's what you're asking. We like, yeah, we like that. And we also gather value from it, not just exposure. We want that feedback. That's how we get it better. Users' expectations are always going to be higher than what you could deliver, which is great. But they're also a great indication where you could take the product, which I think is a luxury that game developers like us have nowadays, that before you wouldn't know. You would just get a Metacritic rating and that's it. Now with social media, with them at the track and giving you firsthand, and they're not shy to give you feedback. So, great. Thank you. That's a screenshot from one of our games.